Jens is next. He has been allocated 2 hours. What we're going to do, or up to 2 hours, what we're going to do is we'll go a half hour, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. Now, by the way, these allocations have nothing to do with the strength of anyone's case. It really has to do with an allocation among counsel of what areas they want to emphasize. So the fact somebody has 2 hours, somebody has 30 minutes, doesn't go to the merits of the case. It's simply an administrative matter. So, Mr. Binns, please.
No. Let me move it. May it please the court? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Binns, and I represent Mike Spicer. Mr. Spicer is a 19-year veteran of the police department, and I can assure you that the evidence will show, after you consider it, that he is not guilty of one single crime charged in this indictment. Not guilty. I can assure you that. That's what the evidence will show. This investigation started out some 8 years ago, in 2007. Now it's 2015. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and now we're into 15. I have been representing Mr. Spicer for 8 months. They were arrested on July 30th. So from that time till now, it's about 8 months. So they have had 8 years to investigate whatever they were going to investigate. Here we are today, and me and all of my co-counsel have had 8 months to catch up to their investigation and find out what the true facts are. Now, during their investigation, they conducted 30 interviews prior to when they arrested their main witness, Jeffrey Walker. 30 interviews. Between when they arrested Mr. Walker a couple of years ago and when they were arrested, they conducted 80 more interviews. 110. From the time that they've arrested Mike and all of the other officers, they've conducted another 98 interviews. And we have been provided with a lot of them. So, what the evidence is going to show is that by virtue of their investigative techniques, they have hoisted themselves by their own petard. And I'm going to tell you what a petard is in my closing. Just going to leave it there. Their Mr. Walker that has been set forth by Mr. Zork, I've never met him. I've never met any of their witnesses, really. I've never met any of the drug dealers. Never met Mr. Walker. He is an admitted home invader, meaning that he has a gang and they invade homes. You're going to hear that from his mouth. He's a money launderer. He steals drugs and sells them, hides the money. He is a drug dealer, quintessential drug dealer. He's a thief. He's a liar. And he's a perjurer, which means that he lies under oath, and he's going to come in here and lie under oath to you when they put him up on the stand. He has to lie under oath because they have a number of situations that they can't have it both ways. One of the witnesses says white, Mr. Walker says black, and they both said it under oath. So one of them has to come in here and lie to you under oath. I'm betting on Mr. Walker. He's an armed robber, by his own admission. He's a drug planter, plants drugs on people so that he can arrest them and then steal their money and steal their drugs. He's a burglar, meaning that he breaks into people's houses and steals from them. he's a drunk, and that won't just come from his mouth. There'll be two women here, Sue and Heather, who will testify that he used to come into their bar where they worked as bartenders and drink himself into oblivion every night. Not only is he a drinker, he's a drooler. He put his head down the bar and then drool for the rest of the night. He's a thug and a coward. Those things are the attributes of the government's main witness. And how do we know that? Well, the government has interviewed Mr. Walker 33 times since his arrest. Now, you'll have to ask yourself, why would they possibly have to interview somebody 33 times if he was just going to walk in and tell the truth? Well, the reason that they had to interview him so many times is because he lies so much. And you're going to hear it throughout this case. He is the quintessential liar. When he was first interviewed after his initial arrest, due to his being caught in the sting, he said, now these are the notes that are prepared by those agents sitting right there. That's Mr. Balistrieri, Mr. Drum, and Mr. Hess. He told them...
Judge, I'll object. Can we see the sidebar?
Proceed, please.
These are summaries.
Hold on a minute, Mr. Ben. I'm sorry. I said let's proceed, but let everybody return to their seats. Sorry. Yes, proceed. Okay. No.
These are not statements written by Mr. Walker. These are summaries prepared by the FBI of what Mr. Walker told them. Now, I can't tell you if it's true or not true. That's going to be up to you, good jurors, to decide what we have here. So immediately after they stung him and got him, in a classic sting, and we all have applauded the government's tactic, which they could have incidentally done to all of these people during the 8 years that they investigated them, but they didn't. The only time that they came out of the box a little bit, they got their hands slapped. So Walker says to them, you feds, you got me good. I did it with a gun. I did a crime while carrying a gun. That's the first statement that they got out of their crime witness. Now, that was on 5/21. The next day, they interviewed him again. And he had then decided that he was going to tell them what led up to his being arrested and what his background was. And he said to them that he told their planted informant, Jalil, that I ain't stealing no drugs. I'm already dirty from the coke. I don't know what he meant by that, but they'll have a chance to have him explain it to you when they get him on the stand. And he said to them, he offered that during the course of his duties as a police officer, he tried to be as honest as he could. That's what he told them the day after they arrested him. So, he said that right away he said to them that he was going to give them the gift. I guess that's the gift. That was what he told them, second interview. And he also told them that he was told by Sue. He put Sue and Heather right in the game. I've met both of them. They're not on their witness list. We'll put them on the stand. Because they're going to put the lie to everything that Jeffrey Walker said about them. What they said, what they did, everything. They're going to say, he's a liar. They're going to say it under oath. So he went on to say that Linwood Norman didn't know anything. So he exculpated Linwood Norman right away. Nobody asked him. He volunteered that. And he said during this interview that he would hear discussions about splitting up money. Now, if what the government now says to you is true, he lied to them on that first interview about his involvement and at least one of the defendants. 7 days later, they interviewed him again. 5/29/13. Now, during this interview, he accused 10 other police officers of being dishonest. He accused Sergeant Joseph McCluskey of being dishonest, said he stole money. Sergeant McCluskey will be in here. And a curious fact that you're going to learn is that they were told this on May 29th of 2013, that a sergeant in the Philadelphia Police Department was stealing money. Do you know when they interviewed Sergeant McCluskey? January 16th, 2015. And when they interviewed him on January 16th, 2015, they didn't ask him anything about this. You'll see his videotaped interview that he insisted upon. And he asked them, why didn't you come to me a year ago? I could have told you this is all not true. He didn't use that word. So then Mr. Walker said at that time, I never planted drugs on anyone. That's a lie. You'll hear it. He planted drugs on plenty of people, including the fellow that he was working with, unbeknownst to him, who was a government informant. He planted drugs on him. Mr. Zork has already told you that. He told them who he got the drugs from, the plant. They've never interviewed him. His name is Bernardo. They've never interviewed him. And then they talked to him about the first job or episode, they call it, that they're going to call to your attention about Kushner. They asked us, tell us about the Kushner job. Well, now you heard Mr. Zork tell you that Kushner said that he was ripped off for $80,000 and they took his safe that was bolted to the floor to do it. Well, in his third interview, Mr. Walker says it was only $30,000. So somewhere out there, there's 50,000 large, not accounted for. Now, they both testified under oath. One of them has to come in here and lie to you. They've already perjured themselves in front of the grand jury that you've heard about. So now they have to come in here and they got to do some doctoring up here. I don't know what it's going to. I don't know how it's going to come, but that's the petard again. So then he talked to them about Heather and Sue again, and he says, Heather, last name unknown, I think it's McElhenney, also told Walker about money that these other that was a Freudian slip, I almost said lawyers, other police officers had stolen and hidden. And the information had apparently been confided to Heather. And Sue told Walker to keep his mouth shut or they'll kill you. And that one of the other officers told her a lot of things. Well, those girls are going to come in here, women, excuse me, and they're going to say, that's not true. None of that's true. He came in with the other, the bar, it's called the post office, it's across the street from where they worked up at the arsenal. So now, he proceeds to implicate Sergeant McCluskey, Sergeant Chet Mulkowski, a police officer named Leo Kudzik, a captain, their captain, Christopher Werner, a retired deputy police commissioner who was at the time their inspector, Bill Blackburn, their lieutenant, Robert Otto, another officer, Charles Kapuzniak, and a sergeant named Robert Friel, and a civilian named Elmer Kinkiner. They haven't interviewed any of these people. These are bosses in the Philadelphia Police Department who have been accused of being criminals in May of 2013. Practically 2 years ago, they've never interviewed them. Well, guess what? They're all going to come in here, and they're going to tell you that he lied to them. And if they had come to them, they'd have told them. Now, giving the prosecution its due, they attempted to interview Christopher Werner and Bill Blackburn in July of last year, just before they arrested these people. And so the officer said to them, okay, give me my Garrity warnings, that's what police officers are given, Garrity warnings. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. And they took their little bags and they went away. So they never sought the information that these people could have given, all of these people. What's that called? That's called willful blindness. They chose instead to accept the word of a polluted source, and the judge will tell you what a polluted source is, instead of eyewitnesses to the events. But we're going to present them to you. He goes all through here telling about how these various individuals that I just enumerated for you were dirty. Dirty cops. Now this is, as I mentioned before, from the lips of the quintessential dirty cop by his own admission. So now, 4 days later, they interviewed him on June the 3rd of 2013. And for the very first time, he tries to implicate Linwood Norman. I don't represent him. He's got a fine lawyer. He'll handle that. But his testimony is 180 degrees from his statement. If the agent wrote it down right, and remember, this is not his statement, this is just what the agent said he said. So, he also said that he didn't hang out with Norman socially. Well, when we get a couple of interviews later, you're going to see that he was at his house all the time, according to him. So, once again, diametrically opposed statements. The people that he talks about in here, a drug dealer, Champ McIntosh, they never interviewed him. He identified them for them. He confused a job. Now, remember when he said that Norman don't know nothing? He says, others on the squad gave drugs to Norman several times. You're going to hear, there's a mantra that goes through his thing. Somebody made me do it. Somebody told me to do it. I stole it. Somebody told me to do it. So now he says to them, he says, he never sold or resold drugs. You will hear countless instances of him selling, stealing, reselling drugs in direct contradiction to what the agent says he says. And he says, the only thing that he was guilty of was taking money. That's a lie. By his own admission. Under oath. That's a lie. But this is the man that they want you to believe in order to take these men away from their families. Then he goes back and he says, again, he revisits the Kushner job, and he said, he stole the safe because it wasn't bolted down, in contradiction to the owner of the apartment who says it was bolted down. He said they took it and they found approximately $30,000 in the safe. And he then says that Deputy Commissioner William Blackburn was present.
Judge, I'll object to that. Can we see it start rolling? I apologize.
Let's just wait for a second here. Okay, let's proceed, please.
May it please the court.
Yeah.
So, on this interview of 6-3, I remember this is what the agent wrote down that he said. This is not, I'm not saying that Mr. Walker said this, I'm just saying that that's what the agent, and the agents that were there are agents Jacob McAdams, Joseph Balistrieri, and Dennis Drum, and a woman named Danielle Valls. So they then got him back to this Kushner case where he told them how they open the safe with a Halligan tool. It's what firefighters use. You can break open practically anything with it. It's a big steel bar. And he said they found approximately $30,000 in the safe. So either something's wrong here. Either Mr. Kushner overestimated by $50,000 or he underestimated by $50,000. But you'll see in his grand jury testimony that he said they split it up 3 ways and he got $5,000. And so you will decide what is really true. Certainly I can't. So now he says that he talked about they took him through a couple of other jobs, and he said that he became, I'm presuming, worried about what they were going to hear on tapes that he was audio taped on. And he said that he was only, quote, talking, I won't say the second word, but it sounds like sit. But he said when he referred to a squad of home invaders while he was on a recording device. And he said he had been drinking. I don't know if it's true or why he was apprehensive about that, but he volunteered that to them. You will hear from the evidence Mr. Walker talk. You'll be horrified at the way he talked, because he talks worse than all 19 other drug dealers. See, he's a drug dealer, so they got 20 drug dealers on their side. But he'll make the other 19 look like choir boys. But in any event, he went on to say that made another police officer, a sergeant, dirty. They've never interviewed him, Sergeant Malkowski. So now, the very next day, they interviewed him again, and this one is a 9-page interview. So the day before it was 7 pages. Now they're back at him. So now in this one, he makes another lady dirty. A police officer accuses her of tipping. Her name is Tasha Norman. It's Mr. Norman's sister. They've never interviewed her. And he goes on to say that there was no application for a search warrant. And the job that they're talking about here is I believe it's the Annan Street job. But the part of this statement that is so remarkable is that he admitted to taking drugs off a drug dealer named Pierre Carter. They've never interviewed Mr. Carter. I don't know where Mr. Carter is. I've never had the pleasure of meeting him. But he admitted to them that he did it. He admitted then that he stole 3 bricks of I guess it's marijuana, and of course somebody made him do it. The devil, he didn't use the devil by name, but just invented a name. So they made me do it, and sold them. And then he said he took drugs to Ivy, which is a drug dealer. His name is Ivan Staten. They've never interviewed him. And once again, he tried to implicate Tasha Norman in a job. And he then told them about cliques of cops that were dirty. He named 3 of them here. They've never interviewed them. And then he named a civilian. He says, Elmer Kinkiner is the biggest dealer in all of Roxborough. Who's going to come in here and say, I know drug dealer. I'm a tree surgeon. They never interviewed him. Now, they told him, the biggest drug dealer in Roxborough, they never went to interview him. And then he said, he delivered the coup de grace, which will show you how wrong-headed this entire prosecution is. He told them that they used to take drugs, pointed out Tommy Licciardello, and strike that, I misspoke. They took jewelry and gave it to his wife. And he said that Licciardello confided to him that he had a place he had a room in his house where he hid money. Now this was in June of 2013. They never searched his house. It's almost comical. I mean, you get that. That's the definition of probable cause for a search warrant right there. because he is their reliable informant who told him just right where to go. Told him he couldn't give him the only thing he didn't do was give him a GPS and a road map and say call Siri or something like that. But that's their boy. I don't know if it's true. Once again, I don't know if he said it. This is only what the agents say he said. And what he said about Mike Spicer was that his sister was a cop. He came on the job before Spicer. He bonded with Licciardello. He came with bets. His wife didn't work, and he loved his kids. That's why I'm proud to be up here representing him, because that's the kind of man he is. He's got 4 children. And he himself is a product of the parochial and Catholic school system here, as are his children. He's a good cop, and a better man, and a wonderful husband, and a fabulous father. You know what Walker said about Sergeant McCluskey, who he already has dirty? I can't say it out loud. He hates that. The word begins with F and ends with R. That's what he told the FBI. And you know what the girls are going to come in here and say? When the girls come in here and say, when he came in drunk, he said, I want Tommy Licciardello's head on a platter, silver platter. Silver platter. He even named the orb that he wanted on. Then he referred to Lieutenant Otto. And he called him the cleaner. Now, I never saw the movie Pulp Fiction, and they're all criticizing me about it. But in the movie Pulp Fiction, there's a guy who's the cleaner. He says that that's what Lieutenant Otto is. Wait till you hear what Lieutenant Otto has to say when he comes in. Lieutenant Otto is a fabulous police officer who, at the time they were all taken out of narcotics and moved to other places, he was too. He lost the job that he loved the most, as did Sergeant McCluskey. You know what's become of him? They have now promoted him to be in charge of all the detective divisions within the Philadelphia Police Department, and said, model it after what you constructed at the narcotics field unit with these men. And he will also tell you, as will retired Deputy Commissioner Blackburn, that these were investigators. These were the go-to guys. That's the words that they will use when they get on that witness stand. These were the go-to guys that we went to when we had a problem in the city. Because they not only got drugs and cash, they got guns. And they wanted all of their departments to be working in between, trading back and forth, because there's such a scourge of guns on the streets of Philadelphia. And these were the people that they put out there on the front lines. This is the thanks that they've gotten.
Now, it's 3 o'clock. Okay, it's 3 o'clock. We're going to take our afternoon recess until 3:15. Please do not discuss the matter among yourselves or with anyone. Leave your notes here, and we'll see you at 3:15.
All rise.
Mr. Benz, we're going to go to 4:30. I don't know whether you'll be able to conclude by then. Okay. Then you come back tomorrow.
Your Honor, I go next. If Mr. Benz is done, say it.
All rise for the jury.
You're going to what? Please be seated. Let's proceed, please.
May it please the court. As part of this interview on June 11th of 2013, Mr. Walker did, as the young people say, me a solid. He said that he never witnessed Spicer steal any money. So I'm going to cut him slack on that and accept that. He then went and was interviewed on June 26th, and he accused police officers Michael Brown, Jeff Galatska, James Kidd, Chet Malkowski, Barry Kahar, Michael Williams, and Leo Kudzik of stealing money. they've never interviewed any of them. He then started to talk about the safe again. And according to what the notes are, it says the safe was not bolted to the floor. Now, there's no wiggle room between not bolted to the floor and bolted to the floor. But I've never met Mr. Kushner, so I don't know how much of an impression he'll make on you, but they can't both be telling the truth. He was then telling him again about something that happened up in the post office bar, and you will hear Heather and Sue come in. As I say, none of the people that he accused of being criminals have been interviewed. A few days later, on July 10th, 2013, he accused Ivan Stanton, Larry McIntosh, police officer, Highway Patrol Police Officer Charles Waters, Greg Barber, Captain Chris Werner, of being dishonest. They've never been interviewed. He said that he never asked Heather for money. She's going to come in and say she borrowed money from her every week. You would borrow it on a Monday and pay it back on Thursday. He then said that when he paid his bill, that Heather would take the money and steal it, put it in her pocket, not in the register. You'll hear from her whether or not that's accurate. I only met Heather once. I went up to the bar, met her. They had her before the grand jury. They had Sue before the grand jury. Mr. Zorich said to them, "Did you tell anybody you were coming down here?" They said, "Yeah, why?" "Why did you do that?" I said, "Because I was coming down." They'll tell you that. They'll be in. You'll hear from them, Heather and Sue. And he also said that she said that they gave her a lot of money. She said, "We never got anything." She'll say to you, the evidence will show that we got tips. That was it. Two very nice ladies, incidentally. Now, when he was talking about this cassiola job, which is going to be the second job they're going to put up tomorrow, Kushner, cassiola, safe, hung over the balcony. He says, now, no balcony involved. Window, twice, same paragraph. Hung them out the window. Well, you'll hear from everybody who was there. Nothing like that happened. He told them that retired Deputy Commissioner Blackburn tackled cassiola. It's ridiculous. Bill Blackburn will come in here and disabuse you of any notion that he would do anything like that. I don't want to use up all my time with these inconsistencies, but they are myriad in number. Now, on a few days later, 7/16, 6 days later to be exact, he once again goes back and interviews Charlie Waters of selling drugs, police officer Barber. Then he accused a man named Mark Wolf. He works with them. He's what's called a TFO. That is a federal agent task force. He's a cop in Philly. He works with them. He accused him of being a criminal. They've never interviewed him. He works on the same floor in the federal building next door. And he also says that in addition to TFO Mark Wolf, he said Thomas Clark, Sergeant Michael Kennedy, and Lieutenant Thomas Wickstead, and Sergeant Meehan watched him, strike that, watched someone else, one of the other defendants, steal an alarm box of some kind that he was going to use in a private business enterprise. He accused a lieutenant and a sergeant of witnessing that and letting it go. They've never asked him about it. They've never asked him about it. So now, none of these people have been interviewed, and we now move on to the next interview, which was now July 23rd. Once again, they asked him to identify the Mark Wolf that he talked about. That's their co-employee, the TFO. They said Walker was shown a photograph of Mark Wolf with his payroll number, and Walker confirmed to them that that was the officer he had mentioned in the earlier interview, so he confirmed that that man is a criminal. That's his accusation. He works in the same building, on the same floor, and they've never interviewed. They took him through a number of other scenarios, and once again, they've never interviewed any of these people that he has identified by name. He then went to a job that they call the Annan Street job. You'll hear about it, where Walker admits that he went in and grabbed 4 kilos. He says Mike Spicer arrived there. Mike Spicer was never there. Well, you know what? I forgot to tell you this. The most important witnesses you're going to hear in this case are Mike Spicer, he's going to take the stand, Sergeant McCluskey, he's going to take the stand, and Lieutenant Bobbiato, he's going to take the stand. And you know what? So unbelievably strange about this case. They're going to overhear what really happened, because the witnesses don't talk to them, they talk to you. So the government, I've been doing this for 50 years. He's only been doing it for 38. He's a spring chicken. For the first time in my experience, the evidence is going to come out of that witness box, and the government's going to learn what happened at the same time you do. Well, really, a little bit later, because they're going to talk to you, they're just going to overhear it. Now, on September the 16th, he tries the dirty once again. I don't know why they keep going back now. This is five pages. Once again, he names Alaska, Brown, Kennedy, Clark, Fernandez, and they haven't interviewed any of them. This is 2015. They interviewed him again on 9/25. And he identified, well, it's not worth going into it now. I don't want to use up all my time on just these inconsistencies, but the ones that jump out, here's one that he's talking about. When they were in Michael Cassiola's apartment, you're going to hear what really happened there. This is the business about hanging him over the railing and this and that and that. Nothing close to that happened. Kushner, his boyfriend, set him up. He lived upstairs. When he came out of his apartment, they grabbed him. They put him up against an interior railing. It was a fire escape. An interior railing, handcuffed him and went in and searched the apartment. Nobody hung anybody over anything, and you're going to hear that from Bill Blackburn, Chris Werner, Mike Mitchell. Mike Mitchell works with them. He's another TFO. He works with them, same floor. They never asked him about this, never interviewed him. He's coming in here to testify. O'Malley and McGrory will all come and testify. And as I say, Cassioli was set up by Kush. That's their name for one another. And Mr. Cassioli is a big-time drug dealer. He's the one who sold all the kids at St. Joe's, Temple, LaSalle, Villanova. He was the mainline drug dealer. And you'll hear a whole lot more about him when they put him up there and we get an opportunity to cross-examine him. Next, they interviewed Mr. Walker on November 15th of 2013, and they went right to this job having to do with his name is Kennedy, and he got popped up here at 401 North Front Street. Big-time drug dealer. He says he had $210,000 in his apartment, and somebody stole some of it, and this and that and that and that. Here's what happened. He's set up there, and all of a sudden it's like a honeypot. Here comes 3 buyers come up. One, bing, 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 bing. They arrested them. So they get the one guy last thing to say, "You buzz us in here." So he buzzes his best buddy. He buzzes him in. Mike Spicer is standing next to him when he buzzes him in. They all go in, not just Spicer. There's a whole crew of them. They all go in, there's 2 flights of stairs, they walk up, there's a second interior door. Kennedy comes out, he opens the door, and he sees Spice. He tries to run back to his apartment. Spice just blew through the door, and when he was trying to close his apartment door, the evidence will show, Spice stuck his arm in. Got him, arrested him, went back to the door, and let the rest of the guys in. And then they searched, and nothing that was improper happened. You've heard that somebody used a sledgehammer to break in a window. None of that happened. As a matter of fact, in their zeal to keep Spice in prison when he got arrested so he wouldn't get bail, they told a federal judge that Spicer hit him in the mouth with a sledgehammer.
You sustain.
In any event, the sledgehammer played no part in anything. Nobody broke a window. All they did was arrest a drug dealer who was a big-time drug dealer, and they arrested all of his friends. His roommate jumped out a second-floor window. They couldn't find him. He said, I didn't think they were cops. So you know what he did? He didn't call 911. He went and sat in a bar and got drunk. They got him later, and then the other 3 people who were his, one of them was coming in here. They say, they have them on the list. They didn't list them all. They're going to come in. They all tell different stories. I wasn't doing this. I wasn't doing that. There's no that. Absolute lies, but they'll be in. That's the Kennedy job. You'll hear more about that as we get into it. Now, another thing they did here was, there's a number, you just heard about 2 stings. They did a number of things that they thought would enable them to convict these men. They set up a poll camera. Poll camera was up there for an entire summer. Recorded nothing. Another time, they had an airplane up, following him around. You won't see a pilot in here because there wasn't anything there. They had another thing where this one guy Laskin, who claims he was traumatized. He's going to tell you he was traumatized by this whole affair, so he couldn't testify to the grand jury. So they let somebody else read a statement from him. It's hard to make this up, but that's what happened. You'll see it. So he said that he was so traumatized that he couldn't testify, but that they brought him back in recently to testify that he saw Kennedy's tooth. Well, listen, Kennedy, by his own testimony, said, I fought Spicer. I didn't know he was a cop. Incidentally, you'll hear testimony that they had vests on that said police across the front. They had the badges around their necks, and when they went in, and they buzzed themselves in. No, he buzzed them in. They didn't. Once he buzzed them in and opened the door, they just did what comes naturally to them. But they did have a fist fight. That's what happens when you resist. When you resist a narcotics officer who is there to arrest you because you're a drug dealer, you can get hurt. You better not fight. If you want to fight, better be a tough guy. But that's what you'll hear happen. You know who's going to tell you the best part of the story? Mike Spicer. He's going to get up there and tell you exactly what happened. They've never talked to him. They don't know what he's going to say. I do.
Judge,
I know what Bobby Otto's going to say.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, sustain.
Now, they went through a number of jobs with him. They call one the pill guard, the deaf guy. That's Procopio. Somebody's already covered that. The fireman that's the job where they talk about Wilson. That's the number 2 job. They're going out of order. It's not going to be the same order as you've seen in that indictment. But they in this 302. This is what they call these things, 302s. He tells them that Sergeant McCluskey stole $50,000. They never asked him about it. And they interviewed him. You're going to see his interview. They never said, hey, Joe, because the guy who was interviewing him is a cop. His name is Gerald Deacon. They never said, hey, Joe, this guy's saying you stole 50 large. They never even asked him. But here's the accusation. And that was back in January of 2014. And now why they keep going back to these jobs, I can't tell you. They're going to have to explain that to you. But as I said, there's 33 of these. But they keep going back. They've got the fireman job. Now, the fireman job is the job where I don't know why they refer to it as a fireman job. This was an easy job. It was as pure as the driven snow. You'll hear all of the officers and bosses come in and testify to how they made the job, what they did, and all of the things that are going to come out of Jeffrey Walker's mouth are lies. I believe the evidence will show. As I said, I wasn't at any of these places. I've only known this man for 8 months. But I do know how to read, and I do know what I see when I read. And what I read is not pleasant. This is not a proud day for the Department of Justice in our country. Not proud at all. Now, the next time they interviewed him, now it's February 28th of 2014. Now he accuses, in addition to Mike Spicer and Joe McCluskey, Sean Kelly, Jeff Galaski, Sergeant O'Con, Sergeant Joseph Bologna, Steve Dimitrick, and Lieutenant Otto. Now you're going to read that. Indictment, and you're going to see where they get charged with a crime that was committed by another guy. His name's Steve Dimitrick. And you know what? They didn't interview Dimitrick. They go through all the. I'll read it to you. They go through an entire scenario in their episodes, and they say all the bad stuff was done by this fellow Steve Dimitrick. He's not indicted, and they didn't even interview him before they arrested these men. When they finally went and interviewed him, months after the fact, I think it was in September, they were arrested in July, he said there was nothing wrong with that job. Nothing at all. It has to do with somebody being charged with a gun and some money being missing. But Dimitrick, who is the prime culprit, according to them, named in the indictment, was never arrested and never charged with a crime. And then when they went to interview him, he told them that there wasn't anything wrong with the job.
Objection. Objection, Your Honor. Can we see it sidebar?
No. What's the basis?
Judge, the basis is this is not what Mr. Dimitrick said.
Yeah. Well, we will. I had instructed the jury that, of course, nothing that counsel says is evidence in this case, neither as to the facts, nor any reference to the law or any personal opinions. To the extent that the evidence that comes in is contrary to what counsel has represented, that'll be entirely up to you to determine. We are to be guided by my instructions on both the role of counsel doing opening statements. Okay, let's proceed.
Thank you. May it please the court. In this same interview, back in February of last year, he says that Officer Bologna let them steal cigarettes and other items. Joe Bologna will come in here and tell you that that's absolutely not true. Then he went on to say, clearly, Dimitrick was also stealing. Now that's the man that they went out and interviewed. He's not been indicted, and he's not been charged. And he's not certainly a defendant in this case. And he says he never heard about Otto stealing money, but he covered things up. Remember the cleaner from this movie that I didn't see. But that's more from Mr. Walker. He then, in his next interview, which is in April of 2014, says that he was interviewed by a Hispanic female from Impact. Impact is an investigative unit within the Internal Affairs Bureau, IAB. Just last week, they gave us a 302 from her, Mrs. Santos. She said, I never said anything that he said in his interview. You'll hear her. We're going to bring her in. So now, we're up to, well, just a few days later, 6 days later, they interview him again, and he dirties up a couple of more cops haven't been interviewed. Then he interviewed a photograph of an officer by the name of James T. Keith, and this has to do with some job up in the 8th District. They haven't interviewed him.
they got him back now on Casciola for I don't know how many times now. Now he's back at Casciola's, and he says he didn't know who paid for the pizza or where the money came from to pay for it. So now he's contradicting what they say Mr. Casciola is going to say. And he says that once again, he's got Chief Blackburn being present at the start of the job, and he says that he remembers Blackburn being down there. This is now they skip back to the Jeffrey Blanco. He's the #1 episode. Jeffrey Blanco, you've heard his name ad nauseum. Walker recalls Blackburn being down there on that job, obviously doing something wrong. Blackburn wasn't even in the squad. He's going to come in here and say, I didn't go there for another 2 months. Okay, so that can't be true, but nonetheless, he feels no compunction about putting these people in it. He's got people buying things for their children. This Williams and Clohar, and they're not indicted. They're not here. Now we're up to August of 2014. Now this is after these men have been arrested. Okay, now they're in jail. Now they're out of jail, but he says that he didn't turn. It's what the agent wrote. Walker didn't turn until he got to the NFU. That he was pretty straight before that. That ain't going to stand up, because when they had to clean him up to come in here before you, he said, I started stealing back in the 35th District, years before he went to the NFU. You're going to see the 302. I'm going to show it to you. So he said that one of the officers unplugged a surveillance, that's what it was, the surveillance box, which he has those two people witnessing and allowing him to do. That's a crime. Okay? Now, I'm trying to get through these as quickly as I can. I think you got the gist of what I'm trying to communicate to you about not being able to believe a polluted source, what it says to you, because he's really incapable of telling the truth, and that's what the evidence is going to show. Here's in this one right here on the January of this year, a couple months ago. Now this is when they're trying to clean him up, because this trial's been scheduled for months. Now they try to bring him in. They got to get him to clean up. So he's now going to start to admit the things that he denied before. He said that he planted 3 grams of cocaine. That's a crime. He says he recalls taking thousands of dollars off somebody by the name of Jackson. That's a crime. He's never been indicted for these incidents, because this is long after he made his deal and filed a guilty plea agreement. And he says, so there's 2. And then he says he stole money from a guy who works near 39th and Aspen Street. So that's 3 crimes that nobody knew about before, but he 2 months ago admitted to them. And he said he was in the 16th District when he did his first work. And if you'll look at his grand jury testimony of April 8th, 2014, page 110, line 7, he's quoted as saying, I didn't really start stealing nothing until I got to the field unit. That's perjury. He's not been indicted for it. That's perjury. In other words, you go to jail for perjury. That's their witness they're going to put up there to testify to you that they now know perjured himself. They know what his grand jury testimony was, because they took him before the grand jury. So he now lied under oath, and now he's admitted that he lied under oath when he said that. Now they arrested him again on February 9th, 2015, last month. And then he once again accuses their co-worker, poor Mark Wolf. I never met Mark Wolf. He accuses them once again of committing a crime, and along with a man named Ryan Flynn and Lieutenant Otto. Okay? So, and then he says that he falsified a voucher for that he prepared for a job, and that he would give Reds, I don't know who Reds is, he'd give him drugs to sell. Now remember, he only took cash. That's all he did. Now he's admitted he gave him, but this is cleanup time now. This is February, the month before the trial. So he said that he's got another job where he admits he stole $8,000 and kept it for himself. And then he said when he would steal things, he would mainly control the drugs. And he said that he falsified a probable cause affidavit and did not report that the drugs came from Reds. That's perjury. That's another count of perjury. And then he said that he falsified another probable cause and stated Reds made the purchase. And he also falsified a voucher. And he made up the probable cause for that investigation. And then he said that at the post office bar, once again, in the presence of their co-employee, Mark Wolf, and his partner, Ryan Flynn, they talked about stealing money. They've never interviewed either of them. Now, he just told them that last month. So, we're getting close to the end, and I thank you for your indulgence. Then, on the 18th of last month, he accused 3 lawyers of crimes. A man named Scott DeClaudio, Lou Savino, and Guy Scioli. He says that they used to meet and work out their schedules with these guys instead of the DA, push their cases back, and that the criminal defense, with the criminal defense lawyers, and that the NFU officers, these guys, they're not indicted for this, but he's admitted to it, and accused these other people. They say they'd agree not to show up in court, and in return, 2 of these lawyers, Savino and DeClaudio, would refer them jobs. Haven't been interviewed. So now, in March 3rd, this month, he recalls a job belonging to Carl Stubbs. They've never interviewed Mr. Stubbs. And then on 3/20, 10 days ago, he accused Sergeant Gorman and Police Officer Hardy of committing crimes, and neither of them have been interviewed as we stand here today, 10 days later. He said that there were occasions, he fessed up and said there were occasions when he was on the job and he could have been considered drunk. Well, you'll hear from Joe McCluskey and Bobby Otto that he didn't do any work. He was either recovering from a hangover or falling asleep. And there's the one job that they skipped over, I guess, unintentionally in their opening, had to do with a man named Silverstein, who Joe McCluskey will tell you that's the only job that he now, in retrospect, after going through an IAB investigation, thinks that maybe somebody stole some money, and the chief suspect is Walker. Because when they were in the job, searching the house, all of a sudden, he had a call of nature. And he was, according to Joe McCluskey, was sweating like a bull. Ran out. They couldn't locate him for the rest of the evening on the phone. He never came back to the search. And then later on, although they entered with a key, they didn't have to break anything in. They entered with a key to Mr. Silverstein's apartment. The door was broken open. And money was, he says money was missing. None of us were there. We don't know. But if there's a culprit, maybe they can get Mr. Walker to fess up. You know, it's fess up time. Maybe he'll come in here and say, you know what, I did take that money. So now, just about at the end, folks, and I'm very, very sorry that I took you through all these accusations. But he then goes on and his, well, we're almost to the end of it. No, that's the end. He says on 3/25, 5 days ago, he says that he accuses 2 more cops of crimes they've never interviewed, and he admits to committing a crime and throws a Pennsylvania State Trooper under the bus with him. He said that he was out, drunk, crashed his car up, a trooper came by, the trooper knew he was a cop, so he let him go. That's 2 crimes right there. He threw the trooper right under the bus. They even asked him the name of the trooper, and they've never followed up on it. That's 5 days ago. But once again, this is cleanup time. This is to bring him in to see you. Now, the last 302 they've given us is dated the 5th of this month. Okay, and they attach to it these sworn affidavits of Mr. Walker, and they said he was asked by the IAB, do you have any information of any police personnel being involved in any illegal, corrupt, or inappropriate activity? And he answered no. And that's his signature. And he did that under penalty of getting fired. So that's their witness. And as I say, here's his grand jury testimony. It's replete with perjury. Okay? Perjury. And they know it. Because they took him there. And they read it. So they want you to put all of this aside, I guess, and say, well, I guess he was having a bad day when he lied about these 33 interviews or when he testified to the grand jury. But they could have made it so easy for you. Because you know what you don't have here? You don't have any non-polluted sources. You don't have a recorded conversation. Somebody before talked about a body wire. This is 2015. No, we're not back in the dark ages. There's no body wires, there's no tapes, there's no audio tapes, there's no videotapes, there's no surveillance, there's no undercover informants. I mean, they could have very easily, but you won't hear it from the evidence, taken any cop, an FBI agent, anybody and said, get in that squad. And they would have gotten help from Bobby Otto, from Bill Blackburn, or anybody in the IAB, because they want to root out 30 cops. They do it all the time. You'll hear them say, yeah, we were responsible for those cops that are in jail now being there. We turned them in, we turned them. They don't hear, so what they want you to do is just speculate. It's like a guy who goes and cleans out a cesspool, dips his hand in, throws it against the wall, says, well, something's got to dry on there. There's not even sizzle here. Forget the fact that there's no steak. There's not even any sizzle here. And I do have some time left, so I would like to go over just a few of these jobs. I mean, this Blanco job is ridiculous. The fact that they would have the temerity to put that in there. The Blanco housing at the hotel was cleared up through the entire chain of command, including the district attorney's office. So not only was Mr. Blanco not kidnapped, he was a guest of the city of Philadelphia. They paid for him. And they also sent down $1,000 because he was going to arrange for them a gigantic, I believe it's a $10 million deal. They caught him dirty with so many things, and incidentally, he perjured himself big time before the grand jury. I can tell you that the pages, he did it on February 4th, 2014, page 9, lines 1 and 4. They asked him, had you been selling large quantities of heroin in the area? No. Lie. Had you been selling small quantities of heroin in the area? No. Lie. And you'll hear his backstory neighbor come in, Mrs. Rodriguez, and say, this guy was so ruthless, he forced them to become a stash house. They went to trial. We have a testimony. They could have gotten that very easily to discredit him, if they wanted to discredit him. But once again, you will learn that this is a case of willful blindness. The result that they got was preordained. This is the result that they got in this room. So they just went around and ignored anything that didn't get them there. That's obvious from what's going to come out of that witness stand. But the Blanco case is a joke. Forget the AK-47. This guy was a thug. And here's another hoisting of their own petard. It's unbelievable. They're going to tell you no drugs, no guns, no this and that. 10 days ago, they went and interviewed the chief inspector of narcotics. Her name is Alice Mulvey. And they started asking her questions. I mean, now this is 8 months after these men have been arrested. They finally got around to going to the ultimate boss in the chain of command, the chief of narcotics. And they asked her some questions, one of which she got wrong. She told them, if a source of it, because this whole thing started about sources. People who were jealous of them did not believe that they could be as successful as they had been, because they were light years ahead of any other squad in the NFU. So they started saying they're not using real sources. So there was a gigantic investigation. They conducted 30 interviews. Remember I told you the first 30 interviews back in 07, 8, and 9. So the reason that started was Mrs. Mulvey didn't know her directives. She thought that Directive 15, you'll hear about it, says that if a source of information is not paid, a confidential informant is paid. Okay? She says, she thinks this is true. A source of information is, if it's used in more than one investigation, it is required that the person be signed up as a CI. That's not true. Former Deputy Police Commissioner Blackburn, Lieutenant Otto, Sergeant McCluskey would come in and say, she just didn't know what she was talking about. As a matter of fact, it got so bad within the Philadelphia Police Department that she used to write to the police commissioner and say, I want these men to be chastised and to be reprimanded for doing this. And so Otto finally went to the police commissioner and he said, hey, you got to tell her to stop doing this. She don't know what she's talking about. He stopped her. That doesn't appear anymore. You'll see a myriad of memoranda during 2010, 2011, 2012 on that very subject in their effort to be transparent. But that's what this whole thing is spawned over. That's how long-headed this thing is. But here is the clincher. 10 days ago, now remember what they said about Blanco. No guns, no drugs, okay? Well, we have them on property receipts. They said to her, they posed this hypothetical to her. Mulvey was asked about a scenario where officers did a search and found an assault rifle and drugs, Blanco, in an individual's residence. The officers then held that person in a hotel a few days and released him. Mulvey opined that if the officers were not going to arrest the individual, the officer's lieutenant or captain should have contacted the district attorney's office immediately and requested the authority to use the person without arresting him. That's exactly what they did. And that's exactly what you're going to hear. But the worst part about this is, the most insidious part is, they know that he had drugs and a gun. And they come in here and indict these men for kidnapping. You can't make, and you'll hear, you can't make somebody become a confidential informant. If they don't want to get paid, they ain't going to get paid. And a lot of them don't want to be confidential informants because there's another instance that you'll see where the Internal Affairs Division sent a registered letter to a confidential informant. And 2 suits show up in Southwest Philadelphia. The guy going to be somebody trying to get me killed? You said this was going to be off the record. That's why they don't want to be confidential informants. They get paid. If source doesn't get paid, unfortunately, Mrs. Mulvey doesn't know the rules. We know the rules. You'll hear the rules. I'll read you the rule, but not now. But better than me, you're going to hear from Bill Blackburn, Bobby Otto, and Joe McCluskey, and everybody else in the chain of command. So, that's the Blanco job. This Wilson job is another joke. They still haven't interviewed Billups or worse. They interviewed Peggy McGrory and never asked her about this incident. They interviewed Sean O'Malley and never asked them about this incident. And this is the one where Walker accuses Joe McCluskey of stealing money. When they finally got around to interviewing McCluskey, as I told you, in January of this year, 6 months after these guys had been arrested, incidentally. They could have arrested them. They worked all 2 blocks away at the Philadelphia Police Department. They could have called them up and said, hey, you guys are indicted, come on down here. They didn't wear guns. They've been moved out of narcotics. They were in a job, I guess you call it a desk job, no weapons, and this and that and that. Instead of doing that, they waited till 5:30 in the morning and went to their house with loaded AR-15s and pointed them at their heads and you're under arrest. Oh, this is America? That's the evidence that you're going to find out. They went to Mike Spicer's house at 5:30 in the morning, pointed that loaded AR-15 semi-automatic gun in his head to announce he's under arrest. A 19-year veteran of the police department. Kushner, at page 46 and 47, Walker tells the grand jury that he took a safe that wasn't bolted to the floor. And he's repeated that in his interview of 5/29/13, 6/3/13. And Mr. Kushner is going to say, I bolted that baby to the floor and it had $80K in it. He's going to say, well, no, it wasn't bolted. I carried it down 17 flights. We broke it open with a Halligan and it only had $30,000 in it. In his testimony here, he says $5,000. He didn't want to give him, I guess he didn't feel like acting like he was rich that day. How are you going to find out what the truth is? How could you possibly be asked to find out what the truth is? You got a pump. But it's their job to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt. This isn't a civil case where you say, oh, well, preponderance of the evidence, blah, blah. No, beyond a reasonable doubt. That what they're maintaining is true. It doesn't pass the smell test. This whole thing, it just reeks of odoriferous. Because it's filled with, you've got nothing but liars here. Kushner's going to come in, he's going to lie to you under oath. Walker's going to come in, Cassiola's going to come in, because the officers that were involved, are Sergeant McCluskey, their TFO, Lieutenant Mitchell, Captain Werner, Chief Inspector Blackburn. They seized an anticipatory warrant. They knew exactly what they were doing. They got it on the basis of what Kush told them, and they took him down, and he flipped like instantaneously, okay? They have not completed their investigation. I mean, to have arrested these men at gunpoint is not good, I can tell you that. But that's the evidence you're going to hear about. And then when they went out, finally, they went out to Bill Blackburn and they went out to Chris Werner. Chris is a captain. Bill is now a retired deputy police commissioner. Pardon me. They wouldn't give them what they're entitled to under the law, under the Constitution. So they said, see ya. And instead of just acting normally and giving them what they're entitled to, they went away. They said, well, I guess we don't need yours. We got Walker. We don't need you. Now, we got Jacob Lowinger. They kind of skipped over that one in their opening. But Lowinger, to my knowledge, has told the agents that he was not physically abused, and he said he had money that he hid in a sofa, that when he came back from prison it was gone, but his mother moved his furniture out. So these guys are responsible for that? But that's what it's going to be. The drugs they found in there were monumental drugs. Robbie Nunez, the same with his. Robbie Nunez wasn't arrested by any of these men. He was arrested by 2 uniformed police officers, one of whom went into his pants. Now, he's perjured himself in the grand jury, said, I didn't have no drugs. So now they had a cleanup. They had a quick cleanup last week where they put him, he said, no, I had a couple ounces. But when he was arrested, the police officer who arrested him went down in his pants and he said, hey man, don't touch that, that's me. He said, no, I ain't you, that's drugs. And he went down the other side and said, hey man, don't touch that, that's me. He said, no, I ain't you either, that's drugs. They took the drugs over the property receipt and he went in before a grand jury with them and lied to the grand jury. You're going to hear it here. If they bring him in, you're going to hear it here, but you're certainly going to hear the officers who arrested him, and you're going to hear what happened there. But they have, once again, when they interviewed Joe McCluskey, they didn't ask him. He was there. They didn't ask him. The only jobs they asked him about were Cassioli, and they didn't like what they heard because he told them the truth. They said, well, how do you remember that? He said, I remember because we got burned. We were supposed to get a big shipment in, and it never came, and the deputy police commissioner put it in the paper, and that's how I remember it. So, as if to say to him, you're making this up, because they didn't give him any papers. And 3 or 4 times during that interview, they threatened him. Oh, Joe, remember, if one of these guys flips and they put you in, you don't have to worry about pleasing some boss up the chain of command. 4 times, you're going to see it. They threatened him. And he said, listen, I don't really care. He said, in 1993, my partner was John Moranowitz. John Moranowitz and his partner Bobby Hayes pulled over a car, and the guys got out and they took one of their guns and they shot Bobby Hayes to death, and they shot John Moranowitz once in the throat and once in the chest. Moranowitz, the day before he got shot, bench pressed 400 pounds and squatted 800 pounds. He's been in a wheelchair since 1993. He says, I would never do anything to besmirch my badge out of respect for those 2 men. So then, all of a sudden, they didn't ask him about any jobs by name. They just started asking generalities because they didn't like what the man had to say. And he's the guy that's been accused over and over again of being a dirty cop who stole money. They never asked him about it. So, the Procopio job has already been spoken about. To my knowledge, Procopio has never made a complaint about anything that happened to him. Agent Drum went to the grand jury on March the 20th of last year at page 4, line 21. He told them about somebody making a complaint about money missing from that job. It's not true. Procopio will be up here. He never made a complaint. You'll be able to find out. But another thing for my client is that Procopio never mentioned the word Spicer to anybody. They got him in the indictment. Doesn't pass the smell test. And when you consider what they have said about this Theodore Carabine, I mean, they went up, there's a procedure called knock and announce. So off your police, open the door. If they don't respond, you break it in. That's what they're taught to do. They carry rams with them. The first guy in the stack is the guy who breaks through the door, and then they all come in after. And they do carry guns, and they do draw them. Because if they don't, they get killed. That's what they're taught to do in the police academy. From day one. We don't fight fair. We're not fighting fair. We're apprehending criminals. When you go through that door, you don't know what's on the other side of that. Mr. Carabine says that he took his gun and he put it down. And then he says that Spice said to him, Ted, put your gun down. He didn't even know his name. Ted, put your gun down. The fact of the matter is that Carabine, they bring him in, is a liar. Carabine, once again, the police officers involved are Stacey Brown, Sean O'Malley, and Thomas Wickstead. Wickstead told them, your indictment's wrong. And Wickstead told them your indictment's wrong. Sean O'Malley told them that your indictment's wrong. Carabine says that Wickstead wasn't there. He was there. He saw everything that happened and told them when they went to interview him, you're wrong. That's not what happened. They took Walker over him. And he also said that Mr. Carabine's civil lawsuit is a lie. Now, I'm sure that it didn't take me to acquaint you with the fact that these drug dealers have been given a lottery ticket. Because now they're all going to file lawsuits. Now they're all going to get rich because these cops, they mistreated them. They hit them, they punched them, they stole some of their money. You'll hear McCluskey up there saying, every drug dealer does that. That's what they do. He's like, you stole my money. And they go out and hire a lawyer. The one that they didn't tell you about, Silverstein, they kind of slid over that. Silverstein's lawyer, I use that lawyer in quotes, goes up to one of these men and says, if you can make this go away, we won't file a complaint with IAB. So what they do is say, well, we're going in with it, so do whatever you want to do. Then they opened up an IAB investigation. The IAB investigator interviewed 9 people. You know how many they interviewed? 2, including Jeffrey Walker. And the IAB people cleared them. Cleared them. And there was nothing here. And Mr. Brown, after making that salacious proposition to the police officer, they said, wait a minute, Stan Davis had the same thing with this guy. So Stan Davis said, yeah, he made me the same proposition. If I make it go, if we give him back his money, and they accounted for every dime, we won't file an IAB complaint. That's the type of people that we have to deal with on a daily basis. Not just the shooters, but the slime that is around them, that live off them. That's what they do, including the lawyers. So now, Ramirez, we're not mentioned in that. There's a Bates case here that Walker is going to testify to. He's so backwards he doesn't know one address from another address. There's nothing wrong with what these men did there, but Walker admitted to the agents here that he stole 3 to 4 pounds of marijuana on that job by himself. But that's just repeated here. This Victor Rosario, once again, is a. This is a good one. You heard about this watch and everything, all right? They're talking about the watch that this guy lost. On 2/27/15, a little more than a month ago, right? Yeah, 2 or 3 days more than a month ago. They got around to interviewing a woman by the name of Sharon McNeil, who identified herself as Victor Rosario's fiancée. Okay? She says that a large black man with dreadlocks, that's why when Walker comes in, he's not going to have dreadlocks. When he was in the NFU, he had dreadlocks down to here. She says that she remembers she witnessed a chance meeting between a large black man with dreadlocks and Rosario, where the black man, not Mr. Reynolds, the black man pointed to his wrist and said, "Thank you," to Mr. Rosario. How do they square that? How do they square that with maintaining that this man stole a watch? Just ask yourself those questions as you hear this evidence come down like thunder. I mean, we've been waiting for this for a long, that's been a long 8 months for freedom. And that's what you're going to get when you see these witnesses here in the Jason Kennedy job. Now, this is a job that's of particular interest to me because of the accusations that have been made against Mike Spicer, okay? Spicer, McCluskey, and Otto are going to come in here and testify that they executed a search warrant at 8:15 at night. Spicer had a ram, battering ram, has 2 handles on it, weighs about 30 pounds. You can knock a door down with it. He had it with him, didn't have a sledgehammer. No one knows they don't issue sledgehammers. He doesn't own a sledgehammer. And nobody has ever accused him of hitting anybody with a sledgehammer. That representation has been made, but nobody's accused him of it. So he said the reason he didn't use it is because a fellow that they just arrested, Mr. Laskin, buzzed them in. He flipped on his body. He buzzed them in. The building has a door, front door, all glass. They went in. They went to the right. They went up the first flight of stairs. They started up the second flight of stairs. And there's Mr. Kennedy at the top of the flight of stairs with the door open. It's an interior security door. Had a little glass in it. When he saw somebody next to his boy, Laskin, he ran back to his apartment. It's only 2 or 3 feet away. Spice bolts through the door, open door. It locked behind him. He stuffed his arm in the door that Mr. Kennedy was trying to close. Kennedy says this in his testimony, you'll see it before the grand jury, he took Spicer to the floor. Well, he didn't win. He got arrested. As soon as Mike controlled him, he went back and he opened the interior door to let the rest of the crew in. They all came in together. They all were there. Nobody went out on any balcony. Nobody did anything like that. As a matter of fact, he flipped right away. And Bobby Otto will tell you that he sat there looking at his refrigerator and said, "I should have stayed there." He was in Costa Rica. He just came back. He regretted it. He didn't lament the fact that he was a drug dealer. He was a big-time drug dealer. He said, "I should have stayed there." But once again, they never asked Joe McCluskey about this job. And as I said, they've never interviewed Bobby Otto. And you will learn what happened here before they do. You can then teach them a course, I guess. But you're going to be able to acquit these people readily because they didn't do anything wrong. Kennedy lied to the grand. Now Kennedy's going to come in. He's a perjurer. He lied to the grand jury on January 7th, 2014, at page 10, line 6, that Spicer took him to the balcony. There was no time to take anybody to any balcony. He turned around and let the rest of his squad in. He didn't do anything with them other than seize them and arrest them. He lied to the grand jury that he had $210,000. Bobby Otto's going to get up there and say, "Well, he told me he only had 100. But guess what? I logged in 130. So he did not know what he had. He said he had 100. He actually had 130. That's what was on the property. You see, the fabrication of that $210,000 is solely for, I guess, civil lawsuit purposes. And so then, you know what happened with Laskin? This Brett Laskin, the guy who set him up, and his mother are interviewed by the agents, and the agents get an idea, we're going to sting him. So they get a lady agent to go down because they learned of this man, Michael Angelina, and they try to get Angelina to implicate them. And Angelina says, "I don't even know what you're talking about." That's another sting. There's several of them. In addition to the plane and the pole camera and Mrs. Angelina and the one that blew up in your face that Mr. Miller discussed to you about, and Mr. McMahon. And here's the best part about Jason Kennedy, who was so injured at that arrest. On August the 18th of 2014. 2014. Now this is 18 days after Mike got arrested. He went and sought treatment for PTSD. You can't make that up, can you? I mean, this arrest took place in 2010, February 24th, and he waited until 2014, 4 years later, to seek treatment for PTSD. He never sought treatment for his teeth that he lost or anything like that. But if he lost teeth, so what? He's a drug dealer. He resisted arrest. Anyway, that's Jason Kennedy, and there's going to be 3 very credible witnesses that are going to tell you exactly what happened there. They were all there, and the people who were around it, this swarm of drug dealers, are so distasteful. Then they moved on to Michael Lau, and they have Mike in there stealing money. Mike was never in the house. He's going to tell you that. McCluskey and Otto are going to tell you that. And the records are going to tell you that. He wasn't assigned there. He was there for the arrest. The arrest happened blocks away on 10th Street. He never went into that kid's house. And once again, if they bring in Mrs. Lau, the most that she can do is stick with what she said. She said, I don't know what they took out. So whatever's on the property receipt is what they took out. But Mike was never in that property. You're going to hear him say it. And this Kenneth Williams, I mean, they talk about an ex-state trooper like he's some kind of a hero. I mean, I can guarantee you, any state trooper who mentioned his name probably couldn't get it out. He's a druggie. No state trooper. He lied under oath about being out on a disability. He was given his walking papers because he was a druggie. He knows state trooper. I know state troopers. And he lied about what he was doing with his money, why he had the money there, and he accused Walker of taking his money. Walker said, no, those white boys took it. But he accused Walker. This Leonard Salmons, Walker's going to get up here and lie to you under oath because he's already lied at a preliminary hearing. He swore under oath that he was the one who bought the drugs. It's not like, oh, did he do it or might he do it? No, that's what he did. He swore under oath. And Sergeant McCluskey and everybody who was there will tell you the way that job went down, there was nothing wrong with it because he came back, he had the drugs, 186 Percocets, and he signed a statement saying, I do. They have a triplicate form you fill out for the guy who makes the buy. Whether or not somebody else made it, who cares? He's the guy who said he bought it, and he's the guy who went into court and swore under oath that he did it. And another thing, he now says to the FBI, well, and this is Salmons is going to say, he said, I saw Sergeant McCluskey in the courtroom giggling about my testimony. No, Walker said that. Walker says that when he went up to testify, he said, I saw Sergeant McCluskey giggling when I was testifying because he knew that what I was saying was a lie. McCluskey wasn't there that day. The records will show it. McCluskey's going to come in and say, I didn't go to work that day. Just another little nice piece about Mr. Walker. And this, the Silverstein job we've already touched on. This is when this, I don't like to call him a lawyer. Anyway, Jerome Brown says the money was taken in a cigar box. He gives the 2 cigar boxes to the Internal Affairs Bureau. They run a forensic test for fingerprints. Not one fingerprint of any of these men was found on that. And they confirmed that he did it with another police officer by the name of Stan Davis. Incidentally, Stan Davis works with him too. He's a TFO. That's 3. So Davis is going to get up there and say, I conducted an investigation. I mean, this man came to me and asked me to throw the case in return for him not making a complaint. But there was a very thorough investigation by the Internal Affairs Bureau. conducted by Sergeant Riley. And Sergeant Riley, as I say, interviewed 8 people. He interviewed Sergeant McCluskey, Lieutenant Otto, Mike Spicer, Mr. Silverstein, Mr. Zach Lee, Silverstein's girlfriend, Miss Davis, another neighbor, Sandra Kravitz, who they say they're going to bring in here, incidentally, and police officer, TFO police officer, Stan Davis, and he cleared everybody. So there was nothing improper about it. And they just now, 3:13, this is 3:30, 17 days ago, they interviewed finally Miss Kravitz, the neighbor who's going to come in and say, I heard noises. This is for a job that happened back in 2011 in February. But, as I say, the real investigators who conducted the IAB investigation found that there was absolutely nothing that was improper about what happened. And this Tina Avery and this Mills job, Mike Spicer was there for everything. Didn't even mention it in the indictment. He was there for everything. And what's going to be testified to and told to you, this is the job where they, in the indictment, said on 11/10/11, Stephen Dimitrick, he's not over there, a police officer known to the grand jury to conceal the theft, that's a crime, from authorities, authored a 7549 report which falsely stated, that's a crime, that defendants Betts found only $19.50 in a dresser drawer and failed to report the additional $4,050 in cash in the gold ring that Betts and Reynolds had stolen from Avery. Dimitrick also prepared the report as to charge Kenneth Mills with possession of Avery's handgun. Dimitrick, that's another crime. Dimitrick failed to state in the report that Avery had the paperwork for the handgun or that Avery had acknowledged possession of the gun. Now, they didn't interview that man until 2 months after they arrested these guys. And that's the same Steve Dimitrick that Walker said stole money. So here's 3 crimes that they say he committed, plus the one that Walker told him about. He's not a defendant here. And why would they arrest these men for what he did? And incidentally, about this gun and this and that, this guy's a drug dealer. He's not allowed to have guns in his house. I don't care who they belong to. He's not allowed to have them. You have a gun, you're a drug dealer, you go to jail. Just that simple. But he told them, Dimitrick, that girl never told me that gun was hers. That's what he said. I wasn't there. None of you were there. This is the government that wants you to convict these men of these heinous charges on the strength of what? Dante Murphy, we are not involved with, it's not listed in the events. And what these things have to do with excessive force. You're not going to hear anything about excessive force being used here. These men are trained to do what they do. It's a specialized unit within the police department. Highly dangerous. Okay, you go through a door, you don't know what's on the other side, like Ted Carabine has a 40 caliber Glock in his hand. The type of people that they deal with on a daily basis are scary. And they put it on the line every day. And for the government to come in here on the strength of 19 mutts and a dirty cop who's all those things I said, I'm not going to repeat them again. It's kind of nauseating just to go through them. They didn't use, they're issued guns. That's what they do. That's what they go to the. That's why they take their Act 120 course in the police academy. They're licensed to do that. Not everybody can carry a gun. They're licensed to do it because of the dangerous work that they do. And when they go in, if they don't know what's on the other side of it, they better have it out. Because we don't want to have another funeral for a police officer in Philadelphia. Been too many of them. But these guys here are the go-to guys. You're going to hear it from their bosses. They're going to come in here. They're going to praise them. They're going to stand behind them. And they're going to testify. Because they don't have a dog in the fight. They haven't been indicted. They got no dog. They don't have a civil suit that they have to stand up. They are just ordinary Philadelphia cops. They're heroes. Just like every one of these men here is a hero. Put it on the line every day so that we can sit in this courtroom in peace and quiet and not have some yokel come in here with an AK-47 and try to disrupt things, have it their way. And they're here to stop the poisoning of all those college students that you'll hear Joe McCluskey said it. We pinpointed this guy, Cassioli. He was the drug dealer for the college students. He had St. Joe's, he had Temple, he had Villanova, he had them all. And you know from the amounts of money that was recovered from him. I mean, it's not like this is some inconsequential thing. They recovered from his brother down in Delaware. They went down to interview his brother. And incidentally, the FBI worked the job with them. They're the ones that gave the FBI the information to go down. They went down and they collected from his brother $400-some thousand that he stashed down there, in addition to the $300,000 they had up here. Now, these guys are serious men. This is not a group of kids smoking weed. These are serious drug dealers who infect our society and our children and our grandchildren. And that these guys here are the ones that stem that flow. And they should not be held to account for charges by people who I can't find the words for it. But in any event, thank you very much for your attention, and we'll be together for quite some time. And I hope that I'll be able to do my job to enable you to very rapidly return with a verdict of not guilty on behalf of Mike Spicer and the other members of this unit. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, counsel. It is nearly 4:30, so